Shattered glass crunched beneath Nurse Chloe Hastings' knees as Dr. Alistair Sterling twisted his gloved fingers violently into her hair. Forcing her down amidst pooling blood, the arrogant chief surgeon thought he was merely teaching an insubordinate Omega her place. In his mind, he ruled Trauma Room 3. But Alistair was about to make the last mistake of his life. He forgot to check the observation window. Lurking in the shadows, ignoring a bleeding gunshot wound, stood Dominic Russo, the city's most terrifying Mafia boss, and an ancient alpha. As he watched the surgeon assault the trembling nurse, Dominic realized he had just found his mate. The harsh fluorescent lights of Seattle Memorial Hospital flickered, casting long, jittery shadows across the linoleum floor of the emergency department. It was 2:14 a.m. on a Friday, and the city was drowning in a torrential downpour. Inside, the chaos was a familiar symphony of suffering. The rhythmic beeping of cardiac monitors, the frantic squeal of rubber soles on wet tile, and the low, urgent murmurs of triage nurses. For Chloe Hastings, a 23-year-old trauma nurse, this chaos was a carefully chosen sanctuary. Here, amidst the smell of iodine, sterilized steel, and human desperation, she could hide. Chloe was an Omega. In the modern world, where ancient werewolf bloodlines had traded medieval castles for corporate skyscrapers and underground syndicates, being an unregistered Omega was a dangerous game. The ancient laws of the packs still governed the shadows of human society. Omegas were prized, hoarded, and often traded like lucrative commodities by powerful alphas. To survive, Chloe relied on black market chemical suppressants heavy, nausea-inducing pills that masked her natural scent of rain-washed jasmine and sweet cream, replacing it with the dull, unremarkable odor of generic antibacterial soap. "Hastings, are you deaf or just incompetent?" The sharp, biting voice sliced through the ambient noise of the ER. Chloe flinched, her shoulders instinctively drawing inward as she turned to face Dr. Alistair Sterling. Dr. Sterling, the chief of trauma surgery, was a man whose medical brilliance was eclipsed only by his monumental cruelty. He was a beta from the prestigious Sterling Pack, a family that owned half the medical supply chains in the Pacific Northwest. Tall, with immaculately styled blonde hair and pale blue eyes that held all the warmth of a morgue cooler, Sterling ruled the ER with an iron, abusive fist. He thrived on humiliation, particularly targeting those he deemed biologically inferior. Though he couldn't smell Chloe's true Omega nature through her suppressants, his predatory instincts recognized her submissive demeanor. "I asked for the 1-4, gauge angiocath, Hastings." Sterling sneered, stepping into her personal space. He snatched the tray from her hands, deliberately knocking a box of sterile gloves to the floor. "Pick them up. And try to engage whatever minimal brain function you possess. We have a mass casualty incident inbound. Gunshot wounds from the Pioneer Square district." "Yes, Dr. Sterling," Chloe murmured, dropping to her knees to retrieve the scattered boxes. Her hands trembled slightly. She could feel the stares of the other nurses, the silent sympathy they dared not voice. Crossing Sterling meant losing your job, your license, and in the hidden world of the packs, sometimes much worse. Before Chloe could stand, the heavy double doors of the ambulance bay blew open. The wind howled into the triage area, bringing with it the copper stench of fresh blood and the terrifying, suffocating aura of pure, unadulterated apex predators. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet by 10 degrees. The chatter in the ER died instantly. Even the patients moaning in the waiting room fell into a terrified silence. Paramedics didn't wheel these stretchers in. Instead, 6 men in ruined, blood-soaked Armani suits pushed through the doors. They moved with the terrifying, synchronized grace of a wolf pack on the hunt. Their eyes glowed with faint, unnatural amber light in the dim hospital corridors. At the center of the formation was a man who seemed to suck the oxygen out of the room, Alex Russo. Alex was a myth whispered in the dark corners of the city. He was the alpha of the Russo Syndicate, an ancient, ruthless bloodline that traced its roots back to the brutal werewolf kings of medieval Sicily. The Russos controlled the ports, the underground trade, and the violent politics of the city's supernatural underworld. Alex was a mountain of a man, his broad shoulders straining against a tailored charcoal shirt that was currently soaked in dark arterial blood. His face was a masterpiece of harsh, aristocratic angles, marred only by a fresh, jagged laceration across his cheekbone. His eyes, a deep, mesmerizing shade of obsidian, swept the room, radiating an oppressive, heavy dominance that forced several beta doctors to unconsciously avert their gaze. He wasn't the one dying, though. Alex was holding the side of a stretcher where his right-hand man, a fiercely loyal beta named Luca, lay gasping for air, a massive exit wound tearing through his chest. "I need a surgeon," Alex's voice was low, a gravelly baritone that vibrated in the chest of everyone present. It wasn't a request, it was an absolute command, now. Alistair Sterling, recognizing the sheer wealth and power standing before him, if not fully comprehending the ancient, lethal danger of the Alpha, pushed his way to the front, instantly adopting his arrogant savior persona. "Trauma Room 3, move him now," Sterling barked at the syndicate men. He turned to Chloe, his eyes flashing with vicious authority. "Hastings, get the crash cart and prep for an emergency thoracotomy. If you slow me down for even a second, I'll ruin you." Chloe swallowed hard, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She grabbed the red crash cart, her knuckles turning white, and ran toward Trauma Room 3. She didn't know it yet, but the heavy, intoxicating scent of dark cedar and ozone, the scent of an ancient Alpha King, was already beginning to burn through her chemical suppressants. Trauma Room 3 became a high-stakes war zone. The small, sterile space was instantly overcrowded. Dr. Sterling, Chloe, and two other nurses scrambled around the operating table, while Alex Russo and two of his heavily armed enforcers stood rigidly against the back wall. Hospital protocol dictated that armed family members wait outside, but no one, not even hospital security, was suicidal enough to ask the Alpha of the Russo syndicate to leave the room while his lieutenant bled out. Luca was crashing. The monitors screamed a high-pitched, frantic warning as his blood pressure plummeted. "BP is 60/40 and dropping," Chloe reported, her voice steady despite the terrifying aura pressing down on her. She moved with practiced efficiency, hanging bags of O-negative blood and pushing saline. "He's got a massive hemothorax," Sterling snapped, his hands slick with blood as he aggressively swabbed Luca's chest with iodine. "Scalpel. Give me the damn scalpel, Hastings." Chloe slapped the instrument into his waiting palm. Sterling moved fast, slicing into the muscle between Luca's ribs. Blood welled up instantly, a dark, pulsing tide. The room was thick with the metallic tang of it. For a normal human, it was nauseating. For the werewolves in the room, it was intoxicating and highly stressful. Alex watched the procedure with dead, unblinking eyes. He leaned against the observation glass of the supply closet, his own unbandaged gunshot wound dripping lazily onto the linoleum. He didn't care about his own pain. His accelerated healing was already knitting the flesh together. His focus was entirely on Luca and, inexplicably, on the small, trembling nurse assisting the arrogant surgeon. Alex's inner wolf, a massive ancient beast that usually slumbered beneath a veneer of cold, calculating Mafia logic, was restless. The beast was pacing, sniffing the air. Beneath the overpowering smell of blood, bleach, and fear, there was a faint, almost imperceptible thread of something exquisite. Rain-washed jasmine, sweet cream. It was a scent that whispered of medieval forests and moonlit hunts. But it was buried, muffled by a synthetic chemical stench. "Clamp!" Sterling yelled. Chloe reached for the surgical tray. Her hand brushed against a Kelly clamp, but she noticed the artery Sterling was reaching for. The bullet had shredded the intercostal artery, and Sterling, rushing to show off in front of the mobsters, was aiming too high, dangerously close to the pulmonary vein. "Dr. Sterling, wait," Chloe said softly, her medical training overriding her deeply ingrained omega submissiveness. "The laceration is lower. If you clamp there, you might tear the vein." "Did I ask for a consult, you stupid bitch?" Sterling roared, his ego flaring. He grabbed the clamp from her tray, his movements jerky with unadulterated rage. He plunged the instrument into the chest cavity and clamped down hard. A sickening tear echoed in the small room. Immediately, a geyser of bright red oxygenated blood erupted from Luca's chest, splashing across Sterling's face mask and soaking the front of Chloe's scrubs. The monitor flatlined, one long, continuous, terrifying beep. "You distracted me," Sterling screamed, his panic instantly twisting into violent blame. In a blinding flash of beta rage, he completely lost his mind. He didn't care that they had an audience. He didn't care about the cameras. He only needed a scapegoat. Sterling dropped the bloody clamp, lunged across the sterile field, and grabbed a fistful of Chloe's hair. Chloe shrieked as he yanked her backward with brutal force. Her feet slipped on the blood-slicked floor, and she crashed down hard onto her knees, shattering a tray of glass vials. Sharp pain shot through her legs as the glass bit through her scrubs, but it was nothing compared to the agony in her scalp. "You incompetent, worthless trash!" Sterling hissed, twisting his grip, forcing her head back so she was looking up at him. "You killed him! You killed this patient!" Tears of pain and humiliation spilled down Chloe's cheeks. "Please, stop," she whimpered, her hands flying up to grip his wrist, trying to relieve the pressure on her hair. "You're hurting me." "I'm going to end your career," Sterling spat, raising his free hand as if to strike her across the face. He never got the chance. The atmosphere in Trauma Room 3 didn't just change, it shattered. The very air pressure in the room skyrocketed, popping the ears of every human present. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered wildly, then exploded in a shower of sparks, plunging the room into the dim red emergency backup lighting. A low, guttural snarl vibrated through the floorboards. It wasn't the sound of a man, it was the sound of a monstrous, primordial apex predator whose territory had just been violated. Alistair Sterling froze. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, and his biological instincts, the beta instincts he thought he had buried beneath years of medical school and country club memberships, screamed at him to submit, to roll over, to beg for his life. Sterling slowly turned his head, his hand still tangled in Chloe's hair. Alex Russo had stepped away from the wall. To say Alex Russo was angry would be a severe understatement. Anger was a human emotion. What radiated from the Mafia boss was a terrifying, ancient wrath. When Sterling's hand had closed around Chloe's hair, something deep and fundamental snapped inside Alex's chest. The faint, muffled scent of jasmine and cream suddenly exploded in his senses, cutting through the chemical suppressants like a scythe through wheat. His inner beast slammed against the cage of his ribs, roaring a single earth-shattering word that echoed in his mind. Mate. This small, trembling nurse, kneeling in the blood and broken glass, was his. The other half of his soul. An omega destined for the alpha of the Russo syndicate. And this pathetic, arrogant beta had just laid violent hands on her. Under the crimson emergency lights, Alex's eyes were no longer human. They were fully shifted pools of molten, glowing amber. His canine teeth elongated into sharp, lethal fangs, pressing against his lower lip. The two syndicate enforcers in the room instantly dropped to their knees, bowing their heads, entirely subjugated by the crushing weight of their alpha's dominant aura. "Take your hand off her." Alex's voice was barely a whisper, yet it sounded like two massive boulders grinding together. It carried the absolute authority of a medieval king decreeing an execution. Sterling was trembling violently. The scalpel fell from his hand, clattering uselessly to the floor. His brain was short-circuiting. The arrogant chief surgeon was suddenly realizing that he wasn't just dealing with a Mafia boss. He was locked in a small room with an ancient alpha werewolf, and he had just assaulted a woman in front of him. She. Sterling stammered, his fingers going numb. He released Chloe's hair instantly, stumbling backward until his back hit the stainless steel counter. "She made a mistake. The patient is. My man is dead because of your incompetence," Alex growled, taking a slow, deliberate step forward. The polished leather of his shoes crunched over the broken glass. "But that is not why you are going to die tonight." Chloe remained on the floor, gasping for breath, her scalp throbbing. She looked up through her tear-blurred vision and saw Alex. The terrifying aura that was suffocating Dr. Sterling washed over her, but instead of crushing her, it felt protective. It felt like a heavy, warm blanket. Her heart rate, previously erratic with panic, began to slow and sync with the heavy, rhythmic thud of the alpha's heartbeat. Alex didn't look at Sterling. His glowing amber eyes dropped to Chloe. Seeing her on her knees, bleeding from the glass cuts, sent a fresh wave of violent possessiveness through him. He knelt gracefully in front of her, indifferent to the blood pooling around his tailored trousers. He reached out with a large, calloused hand. Chloe flinched instinctively, expecting a blow. Instead, Alex's long fingers gently brushed the tears from her cheek. His touch was burning hot. Where his skin met hers, a jolt of pure, electric energy sparked, a physical manifestation of the mate bond clicking into place. Chloe gasped, her wide green eyes locking onto his terrifying beautiful face. "Who? What are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yours," Alex replied, his tone softening only for her, a fierce vow sealed in blood and shadows. He stood up, his massive frame shielding her entirely from Sterling's view. He turned his attention back to the surgeon, the tenderness vanishing, replaced by cold, unadulterated murder. "Silvio," Alex said, without looking away from Sterling. One of the enforcers on the floor immediately snapped to attention. "Yes, Alpha. Lock the doors to this wing. No one enters. No one leaves. Shut down the security cameras on this floor," Alex ordered. "Call the cleaners. We are taking the hospital." Sterling's face drained of all color. "You can't do this. I am Dr. Alistair Sterling. My family—" "Your family makes bandages and bedpans," Alex interrupted, his lip curling in disgust. "My family built the foundations of this city on the bones of men far stronger than you, and you just put your hands on my Omega." Sterling's eyes widened in sheer, unadulterated horror as the realization hit him. He looked from the terrifying Mafia boss to the small, bleeding nurse on the floor. An Omega, an Alpha's mate. In the ancient laws of the pack, touching an Alpha's mate without permission carried only one penalty. A slow, terrifying smile spread across Alex's face, flashing his elongated canines. "I am going to take you apart, Doctor," Alex whispered, unbuttoning the cuffs of his ruined suit jacket, "and I am going to take my time." Outside Trauma Room 3, the heavy click of the electronic deadbolts echoing down the hallway signaled that St. Jude's ER no longer belonged to the doctors. It belonged to the wolves, and the hunt had just begun. The heavy steel doors of Trauma Room 3 were sealed tight, but the oppressive weight of Alex Russo's aura seemed to warp the very walls. The emergency red lights cast long, bloody shadows, making the massive Alpha look like a demon summoned straight from the lowest circles of hell. Dr. Alistair Sterling was hyperventilating. The bravado that usually puffed up his chest was entirely gone, replaced by the primal, sickening terror of a lesser wolf, realizing he had bared his teeth at a god. "You don't understand," Sterling pleaded, his voice cracking violently. He pressed his back so hard against the stainless steel cabinets it looked as though he were trying to phase through them. "My father is the Alpha of the Bellevue Pack. We are allied with the Sterling Medical Group. We rival the Medtronic Empire. If you touch me, my family will pull all funding, all medical supplies from your territories." Alex didn't blink. He moved with a terrifying, liquid grace, closing the distance between them. "Your father," Alex said, his voice a low, vibrating hum that rattled the glass vials remaining on the counter, "is a glorified pharmacist who plays at being a wolf. He deals in bandages and billing codes. I deal in blood and bone." Alex's large hand shot out, moving faster than human eyes could track. He bypassed Sterling's throat entirely and clamped his fingers around the surgeon's right wrist. Sterling let out a high-pitched scream as Alex's grip tightened like a steel vice. "These hands," Alex whispered, leaning in so close that Sterling could feel the heat of his breath. The scent of dark cedar and ozone was suffocating, laced with the copper tang of impending violence. "These are the hands you used to play God. The hands that botched my lieutenant's surgery because you were too arrogant to listen to a nurse." Alex's glowing amber eyes flicked to the floor, where Chloe was still kneeling, trembling violently. The sight of her bloodied knees and tear-stained face sent a fresh, uncontrollable wave of murderous rage through him. "And these are the hands," Alex continued, his voice dropping to a deadly, hollow whisper, "that you used to touch my mate." "No, please!" Sterling shrieked, finally understanding the catastrophic magnitude of his mistake. "I didn't know. She's taking suppressants. I couldn't smell her. She's unregistered trash." Crack. The sound of shattering bone echoed like a gunshot in the small room. Alex didn't just break Sterling's wrist, he crushed it, pulverizing the intricate network of carpals and metacarpals into a useless, agonizing paste. Sterling collapsed, vomiting from the sheer, blinding pain, clutching his ruined arm to his chest. He wailed, a pathetic, broken sound that offered no satisfaction to the ancient beast inside Alex. "Silvio," Alex called out smoothly, releasing the weeping doctor and stepping back to avoid the mess on the floor. "Yes, Alpha," the enforcer replied instantly, stepping forward from the shadows. "Bind him. Put a tourniquet on that arm if he bleeds, but do not give him painkillers," Alex ordered coldly. Take him to the meat lockers at the Pier 52 docks. Let him sit in the freezing dark and think about his hands. I will decide how to finish him tomorrow." "And the Bellevue pack?" Silvio asked respectfully. "If his father has a problem with it, tell him to come see me. I could use a new rug for my study," Alex replied dismissively. He turned his back on the ruined surgeon, his vengeance only momentarily sated. The immediate threat was neutralized. Now, the overwhelming, undeniable pull of the mate bond demanded his absolute attention. Alex knelt back down on the blood-slicked floor, his tailored trousers already ruined, but he couldn't care less. He looked at Chloe. She was shivering uncontrollably. The adrenaline crash was hitting her, compounded by the terrifying realization of what had just happened. She was an unregistered Omega, hiding from a world that viewed her as property, and she had just been claimed by the most dangerous alpha on the West Coast. Her medical career was over. Her cover was blown. Yet, as Alex reached out and gently cupped her face, her inner wolf, repressed and starved for years by toxic chemical suppressants, surged forward. It practically purred, leaning her cheek into the rough warmth of his palm. "Don't cry, Mia Luce," Alex murmured, his voice stripping away the harsh gravel to reveal a startling velvet tenderness. His thumb brushed over her cheekbone, wiping away a smear of Luca's blood. "He will never touch you again. No one will." You called me your mate," Chloe stammered, her green eyes wide and luminous in the dim light. "I don't even know you. I'm just a nurse." "You are an Omega," Alex corrected softly. "My Omega. The bond is already singing in your blood, just as it is in mine. I can smell you fighting it. The suppressants you take, they are poisoning you." Without asking for permission, Alex slid one massive arm under her knees and the other behind her back. He stood up effortlessly, lifting Chloe as if she weighed no more than a breath of air. Chloe gasped, instinctively wrapping her arms around his thick neck to steady herself. The moment her chest pressed against his, a shockwave of profound, intoxicating warmth radiated through her body. The heavy scent of his cedar and ozone aura enveloped her, aggressively battling the nausea caused by her pills. It felt terrifyingly like coming home. Alex turned to his remaining men. They were already moving with quiet efficiency, respectfully covering Luca's body with a sterile sheet. "Take our brother to the estate mortuary. Treat him with the highest honors," Alex commanded, a flicker of genuine grief passing through his amber eyes before hardening back into absolute authority. "We leave the hospital now. Burn the security drives on the way out." He didn't look back as he carried Chloe out of the trauma room, leaving behind the shattered remnants of her old life. The torrential Seattle rain battered the reinforced bulletproof glass of the Cadillac Escalade. Inside the cavernous leather-scented cabin, the atmosphere was thick, charged with an electric tension that made the air feel heavy. Chloe sat huddled on the wide back seat, drowning in Alex's massive charcoal gray suit jacket. He had draped it over her blood-soaked scrubs the moment they stepped into the freezing night air. She was curled into the corner, her knees pulled up to her chest, fighting a violent battle within her own body. The suppressants were failing. The heavy dose of synthetic hormones she took daily to crush her Omega nature was being aggressively metabolized and purged by her system, triggered by the overwhelming proximity of her true mate. Withdrawal was a nightmare. Her skin burned with an unnatural fever, her joints ached, and an intense, deep-seated ache was beginning to bloom in her lower abdomen, the terrifying precursor to an Omega's heat. Alex sat next to her, giving her space but watching her with hawkish intensity. The convoy of black SUVs sped seamlessly across the SR 520 floating bridge, leaving the city skyline behind. They were heading toward Medina, the ultra-exclusive enclave known for housing the world's elite. As they passed the sprawling, high-security, real private estate of Jeff Bezos, taking a secluded, unmarked turnoff into the dense evergreens, Chloe realized exactly how far out of her depth she was. "You're in pain," Alex stated. It wasn't a question. He could feel her distress pulsing through the newly formed, fragile threads of their mate bond. "I need my pills," Chloe gasped, her fingers gripping the lapels of his jacket so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Please, they're in my locker at the hospital. If I don't take them." "If you take them, you will destroy your liver and sever your connection to your wolf," Alex said, his tone uncompromising but gentle. He reached across the seat, his large hand enveloping both of her trembling ones. "I know why you took them. I know the world is cruel to unprotected Omegas, But you are not unprotected anymore. You will never take that poison again." "You don't understand," Chloe cried out, a sob tearing from her throat. Panic, sharp and suffocating, seized her. "You don't know who I am. You don't know why I'm hiding." Alex frowned, his grip tightening protectively. "Then tell me." Before she could answer, the SUV slowed, passing through a massive pair of wrought iron gates adorned with the Russo family crest, a snarling wolf crowned in thorns. They pulled into the courtyard of a staggering modern Gothic mansion built directly into the cliffs overlooking Lake Washington. It was a fortress disguised as a billionaire's sanctuary. Alex didn't wait for his driver to open the door. He stepped out into the rain and pulled Chloe into his arms once more, sheltering her from the downpour as he strode up the grand stone steps. The heavy mahogany doors flew open before he reached them. The foyer was a testament to ancient wealth, marble floors, soaring ceilings, and heavily armed enforcers standing like statues in the shadows. Alpha, an older, elegantly dressed beta woman, greeted him, bowing her head deeply. "We prepared the medical wing as soon as Silvio called." "Thank you, Dr. Hughes," Alex said, striding past her down a long, opulent corridor. "She is experiencing severe suppressant withdrawal, and she is my mate." Dr. Hughes gasped, her eyes widening as she hurried to keep pace with Alex's long strides. "Your mate, Alpha? This is unprecedented. I will prepare the neutralizing IV fluids immediately." Alex carried Chloe into a private, state-of-the-art medical suite that rivaled the ICU she had just left, though this one featured plush velvet couches, dim, warm lighting, and the absolute absence of Dr. Alistair Sterling. He laid her down gently on the examination bed, refusing to step back as Dr. Hughes approached with a stethoscope and a tray of vials. "Alpha, I need to remove her scrubs to assess the lacerations from the glass and begin the IV," Dr. Hughes said softly, her eyes averted in respect. Alex's inner beast snarled at the thought of another pair of eyes on his mate, but his rational mind knew she needed medical care. He gave a stiff, reluctant nod and turned his back, standing guard at the door like a sentinel. Chloe was too exhausted and feverish to protest. She let Dr. Hughes gently cut away the blood-stiffened fabric of her scrub top. The cool air of the room hit her feverish skin, offering a momentary, blissful relief. But that relief vanished the second she heard Dr. Hughes suck in a sharp, horrified breath. "Alpha," Dr. Hughes whispered, her voice trembling with an emotion Chloe had never heard from the composed doctor, raw fear. Alex whipped around, his eyes instantly flashing amber. "What is it? Is she crashing?" "No, Alpha," Dr. Hughes stammered, stepping back from the bed and pointing a shaking finger at Chloe's right shoulder, which had been exposed when the scrubs fell away. It's her shoulder." Chloe squeezed her eyes shut. "No, please, no." Alex stepped forward, his massive frame looming over the bed. He looked down at Chloe's pale, delicate skin. High on her right shoulder blade, seared deeply into the flesh, was a brutal, jagged scar. It wasn't a random injury, it was a brand. It was a two-headed eagle clutching a shattered skull. The temperature in the room plummeted. The comforting scent of cedar and ozone instantly morphed into the terrifying, ozone-heavy stench of a coming hurricane. Alex traced the raised, pale lines of the scar with a trembling finger. The brand was old, but the message it carried was eternal. "The Volkov Syndicate," Alex breathed, the name tasting like ash on his tongue. The Volkovs were the Russian werewolf mafia. They controlled the eastern seaboard and were the most ruthless, bloodthirsty pack in North America. They were known for breeding their omegas in brutal, horrific camps to produce elite, monstrous alpha warriors. They didn't just mark their territory, they branded their property. Alex looked from the brand to Chloe's tear-streaked face. The pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. Her absolute terror. Her desperate reliance on toxic suppressants. Her meticulous disguise as a human nurse. She wasn't just an unregistered Omega. She was a runaway breeding Omega from the Volkov Syndicate. "Alex, please," Chloe wept, curling in on herself, trying to hide the brand from his sight. "I ran away 3 years ago. If you claim me, if they find out I'm here, Ivan Volkov will bring the entire Russian mob to Seattle. They will kill everyone. You have to let me go." Silence stretched in the room, thick and suffocating. Dr. Hughes held her breath, waiting for her Alpha to make the logical, tactical decision. A single Omega, even a mate, was not worth a full-scale catastrophic war with the Volkovs. The honorable thing to do was to give her a new identity and send her far, far away. Alex stood perfectly still for a long moment. Then, slowly, deliberately, he leaned down. He didn't look away from her eyes as he pressed his lips gently against the jagged, horrific scar of the Volkov brand. "Let them come," Alex whispered against her skin, his voice devoid of fear, filled only with the terrifying promise of a massacre. "Let Ivan Volkov march his army to my gates. I will paint the streets of Seattle with their blood before I let them touch a single hair on your head. You are Russo now." Chloe stared up at him, her heart shattering and rebuilding itself in the same breath. She had spent her entire life running from monsters. She never imagined that the only way to survive them was to be claimed by the devil himself. The transition was agonizing. For 3 years, Chloe's body had been a barren, chemically induced wasteland. Now the dam had burst. The sudden absence of the synthetic suppressants, combined with the overpowering proximity of her true mate, sent her biology into a violent, unstoppable tailspin. By 4:00 a.m., the plush medical suite felt like a blast furnace. Chloe writhed on the silk sheets, her skin slick with a cold sweat that smelled intensely of rain, washed jasmine and sweet cream. The scent was no longer faint, it was a physical force, thick and intoxicating, flooding the mansion's ventilation system and driving the Russo guards stationed in the hallways to the brink of frenzy. Alex had been forced to clear the entire East Wing, ordering his men to patrol from the gardens to keep their sanity intact. Only Alex remained, a solitary mountain of unwavering resolve sitting at the edge of her bed. He had shed his ruined suit jacket and tie, his white dress shirt unbuttoned to reveal the dark, curling hair of his chest and the jagged silver scars of past syndicate wars. "Make it stop," Chloe whimpered, her fingers curling into claws against the mattress. The ache in her lower abdomen was no longer a dull throb. It was a blinding, molten heat. The primal instinct of an omega entering her cycle, a cycle delayed by years of poison, was clawing its way to the surface, demanding to be answered. "Alex, please. I'm burning alive." Alex's jaw was locked so tight the muscles twitched. His inner beast was roaring, pacing against the confines of his ribs, demanding he take her, claim her, and ease her suffering the way nature intended. But Alex Russo was a king, not a feral animal. He refused to take her while she was delirious with pain and fear. "Hold on, Mia Luce," Alex rumbled, soaking a linen cloth in a basin of ice water and gently pressing it to her flushed forehead. "Dr. Hughes is synthesizing a specialized IV drip. It will flush the remaining toxins from your liver without halting your natural shift." Chloe leaned into his touch, her breath hitching. The heat radiating from his calloused hand was entirely different from the fever burning her from the inside out. His touch anchored her, pulling her back from the edge of the abyss. Just as Alex re-wet the cloth, the heavy oak door of the suite cracked open. Silvio, Alex's loyal enforcer, stepped inside, his eyes immediately dropping to the floor to avoid looking at the Luna in her vulnerable state. "Forgive the intrusion, Alpha," Silvio said, his voice tight. He was holding a sealed, bloody evidence bag. The intelligence team just finished dissecting the forensics from the Pioneer Square shootout. The one that took Luca. Alex didn't look up, his attention entirely focused on wiping the sweat from Chloe's throat. "Report. It wasn't a random territorial dispute with the local street factions, boss," Silvio continued, swallowing hard. "We extracted a bullet from the masonry at the scene. It's custom milled. Pure titanium core, jacketed in silver nitrate." Alex's hand froze mid-air. The air in the room suddenly turned to ice. Silver nitrate. It was a highly illegal, incredibly expensive modification designed for one purpose: to lethally poison an Alpha's healing factor. And it was the signature calling card of the Volkov Syndicate's elite death squads. "They weren't hunting Luca," Alex said, his voice devoid of all inflection, a terrifyingly calm observation. "No, Alpha," Silvio confirmed. "Our contacts inside the Seattle Police Department intercepted a burner phone from one of the dead shooters. They were systematically sweeping the downtown hospitals. They were looking for an unregistered female hiding in the medical sector. They were looking for her." Chloe gasped, a fresh wave of terror piercing through the haze of her fever. "Ivan," she choked out, tears spilling over her lashes. "Ivan Volkov. He found me. He knows I'm in Seattle." Alex stood up, the linen cloth dropping to the floor. The terrifying ancient apex predator was back, his amber eyes glowing with infernal light. The realization that Luka had died because the Volkovs were hunting his mate ignited a fury so profound it threatened to shatter the windows. "Double the perimeter guard," Alex ordered Silvio, his voice echoing with absolute authority. "Activate the localized EMP jammers around the Medina estate. No drones, no surveillance. Call in the lieutenants from Portland and Vancouver. We are at war." "Yes, Alpha." Silvio bowed deeply and vanished, securing the heavy door behind him. Alex turned back to the bed. Chloe was curled into a tight ball, weeping, convinced she had brought death to the only place she had ever felt safe. "I'll leave," she sobbed, trying to push herself up on trembling arms. "If I turn myself over to them, they'll leave your pack alone. I'm just one Omega, Alex. Luka is dead because of me. I can't let your family." Before she could finish the sentence, Alex was on the bed with her. He pulled her flush against his massive chest, trapping her flailing arms, burying his face in the crook of her neck, right over her scent gland. "Do not ever," Alex growled against her pulse point, his fangs grazing her skin, "insult my honor by suggesting I would surrender my soul to save my life. You are not a burden, Chloe. You are my reason for slaughter." The vibrations of his chest, the absolute unyielding possession in his words, shattered the last of Chloe's emotional defenses. The withdrawal fever spiked, merging seamlessly with the overwhelming instinctual demand of her Omega heat. She arched her neck, offering herself to him completely. "Claim me," she whispered, her voice a desperate ragged plea. "Make me Russo. Make me yours." Alex didn't hesitate. He claimed her mouth in a searing, possessive kiss, tasting the salt of her tears and the sweet, intoxicating rain of her true essence. As the storm raged outside, pounding against the reinforced glass of the Medina estate, an even fiercer storm broke within the walls of the medical suite. In the shadows of impending war, the Mafia king finally took his queen, biting deep into the junction of her neck and shoulder, mixing their blood and sealing a bond that not even death could break. 3 days later, the rain had ceased, leaving Seattle bathed in the cold gray light of a reluctant dawn. Inside the ultra-exclusive walls of the Rainier Club, an elite private establishment in downtown Seattle where the city's billionaires, politicians, and hidden supernatural lords orchestrated the world, a different kind of darkness was brewing. Richard Sterling, the alpha of the Bellevue Pack and CEO of the Sterling Medical Group, sat rigidly in a high-backed leather chair in a soundproofed, subterranean VIP room. He was a man accustomed to absolute control, his silver hair impeccably styled, his bespoke suit flawlessly tailored. But today, his hands trembled as he stared at the crystal tumbler of bourbon on the mahogany table. His son, Alistair, was currently lying in a secure wing of their private hospital, heavily sedated. Alex Russo hadn't just broken Alistair's hands, he had systematically shattered every bone below the elbow, ensuring the arrogant surgeon would never hold a scalpel or anything else ever again. The humiliation to the Sterling family name was catastrophic. The heavy oak door opened, and the temperature in the room plummeted. A man stepped inside, moving with the cold, mechanical precision of a military assassin. He wore a heavy wool trench coat, his face a pale, sharply angled mask of indifference. His eyes were the color of dirty ice. Victor, the top lieutenant of the Volkov Syndicate, dispatched directly from Moscow by Ivan Volkov himself. "Mr. Sterling," Victor said, his accent thick and grating. He didn't offer his hand. He simply sat across from Richard, exuding a scent of ozone and frozen earth that made Richard's beta instincts scream in warning. "You requested this meeting outside the usual channels. Risky. If Russo catches wind of this, your medical empire will burn before sunset." "Russo is a rabid dog who needs to be put down," Richard spat, his fear momentarily eclipsed by his blinding hatred. "He mutilated my son. He violated the unspoken treaties of this city." "Russo operates by the old laws," Victor replied smoothly, lighting a dark Russian cigarette. "Your son touched an alpha's mate. By the old laws, Russo showed remarkable restraint by leaving him breathing. She's an unregistered street rat." Richard slammed his fist on the table. "She," Victor corrected, his icy eyes narrowing, "is Volkov property. She is a prize breeder who stole herself from our camps. Ivan wants her back. Alive. Her womb belongs to the motherland." Richard leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with malicious intent. Then we have a mutual goal. You want the girl. I want Alex Russo's head on a spike. But Russo's Medina estate is impenetrable. His security is airtight, and his men are fiercely loyal. A direct assault will result in a bloodbath that will draw the attention of the human authorities. Victor took a slow drag of his cigarette. I am listening. The Russo syndicate controls the docks, but my company, Sterling Medical, controls the city's private blood banks, Richard said, a venomous smile curling his lips. Werewolves require massive amounts of synthesized oxygenated blood during heavy trauma recovery. Russo's pack relies on our shipments for their underground clinics. Victor's eyes sparked with dark interest. Tomorrow, Richard continued, we are scheduled to deliver a massive shipment of O-negative to the Russo estate's private medical wing to replenish their stores. My chemists have developed a proprietary synthetic compound. It's odorless, tasteless, and highly reactive to werewolf physiology. A paralytic? Victor asked. Better, Richard purred. It's a neurological dampener. It severs the connection between the brain and the inner wolf. For 12 hours, anyone who ingests or is transfused with this blood will be trapped in their human form, weak, slow, defenseless. Victor leaned back, processing the tactical advantage. To strip the Russo enforcers of their speed, their strength, their claws, it would turn a fortress of apex predators into a house of fragile glass. And how do you ensure Russo himself is compromised? Victor asked. He will not need a transfusion. The compound is highly volatile. We will aerosolize a concentrated dose in the ventilation system of the blood coolers. The moment his men open the crates in the estate's armory, the compound will flood the air. His entire inner circle will be paralyzed within minutes. Richard slid a heavily encrypted flash drive across the mahogany table. Here are the security schematics for the Medina estate's ventilation hubs, courtesy of the original architects. I will cripple the wolves. You send in your death squads, take the girl, and leave me Russo's heart. Victor picked up the drive, slipping it into his trench coat. He offered a cold, predatory smile. A Judas pact, Mr. Sterling. Very well, the Volkovs accept your terms. Tomorrow night, the Russo Empire falls. Across the water, oblivious to the treason brewing in the city, Chloe awoke to the sound of seagulls and the gentle lapping of waves against the cliffs. The fever was gone, the agonizing heat had broken, leaving behind a profound, humming sense of peace she had never experienced in her life. She was tangled in dark silk sheets, the heavy scent of cedar and ozone blanketing her like a physical shield. She turned her head and found Alex sitting in a leather armchair by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching her. He was dressed in a simple black Henley and slacks, looking less like a Mafia king and more like a weary, devoted guardian. Chloe sat up, the sheets falling away to reveal the fresh, dark bite mark on the junction of her neck, the Alpha's claiming mark. She traced it with trembling fingers. It didn't hurt. It pulsed with a warm, steady rhythm that synchronized perfectly with the heartbeat of the man across the room. You're awake, Alex said, his voice a low, soothing rumble. He crossed the room in 2 strides, sitting on the edge of the bed and gently catching her hand, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. How do you feel? Different, Chloe breathed, looking deeply into his eyes. The oppressive fear that had dictated her every waking moment for 3 years was gone. Her inner wolf, once starved and beaten down, was sitting proudly at the surface, purring under her Alpha's touch. I feel strong. Alex smiled, a rare, breathtaking expression that transformed his harsh features. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. You are strong, Alex said softly. You survived the Volkovs. You survived the suppressants. You survived the human world. And now you rule mine. He opened the box. Inside rested a breathtaking antique ring. It was a massive, flawless emerald, surrounded by intricate silver filigree wrought in the shape of intertwining vines and wolf fangs. This belonged to my grandmother, Alex explained, sliding the heavy ring onto Chloe's left ring finger. It was a perfect fit. It is the matriarch's ring of the Russo pack. When you wear this, every wolf on the West Coast will know that you are my Luna, my equal, my life. Tears pricked Chloe's eyes, but this time, they were tears of profound joy. She threw her arms around Alex's neck, burying her face in his chest. I love you, she whispered, the words slipping out easily, absolute and undeniable. Alex's arms crushed her to him in a desperate, fierce embrace. I love you, Chloe, and I swear on my blood, nothing in this world will ever tear you from me again." But as the sun began to set, casting long, bloody streaks across the surface of Lake Washington, a Sterling Medical Group delivery truck quietly passed through the outer security gates of the Medina estate, carrying a payload of poisoned blood and a countdown to absolute ruin. The Sterling Medical Group delivery truck, a massive, unassuming white box truck, rolled smoothly past the Medina estate's outer wrought iron gates. The Russo guards, recognizing the scheduled delivery of synthetic O-negative blood, a vital lifeline for the underground clinics, waved it through without a second glance. It was a fatal oversight, born of routine. They were expecting an army of Russian mobsters, not a Trojan horse disguised as medical supplies. The truck backed into the subterranean loading dock beneath the estate. Silvio, Alex's loyal beta lieutenant, was there to receive it, accompanied by 6 heavily armed enforcers. "Stack the crates in the primary cooler, then cycle the air," Silvio instructed the driver, a twitchy human who refused to meet his eyes. The moment the first crate was breached inside the reinforced climate-controlled armory, a faint metallic hiss echoed in the chamber. It was completely odorless and invisible to the human eye, but Silvio's highly attuned werewolf senses caught it a fraction of a second too late. It wasn't a scent, it was an absence, a sudden, terrifying void. Silvio gasped, clutching his chest as his knees buckled. The glowing amber light in his eyes flickered violently, then snapped out, replaced by a dull human brown. Around him, the 6 enforcers collapsed to the concrete floor, their muscles locked. The profound, primal connection to their inner wolves was violently severed, replaced by a suffocating, icy paralysis. They couldn't move. They couldn't shift. They couldn't even howl to warn their alpha. Upstairs, in the master suite overlooking the dark expanse of Lake Washington, Alex was standing by the window, a glass of bourbon in his hand. Chloe was asleep, her breathing deep and even, the emerald matriarch ring heavy on her delicate hand. Suddenly, the crystal tumbler shattered in Alex's grip. He didn't hear a gunshot. He didn't smell blood. He felt it in his mind. The pack bond, the intricate telepathic web that connected an alpha to his subordinates, was snapping. One by one, the bright, vibrant stars of his enforcers were blinking out into terrifying darkness. "They're here," Alex breathed, his voice rough. He closed his eyes, reaching deep into his soul to summon the ancient beast, preparing to shift into the massive, apex predator that had conquered the city's underworld. Nothing happened. A cold, creeping numbness was seeping through the estate's HVAC system, pouring through the vents of the master suite. Alex hit his knees, a guttural groan tearing from his throat as the neurological dampener flooded his system. It felt as though thick, iron chains were being wrapped around his inner wolf, dragging it down into an inescapable abyss. The beast roared in defiance, but the chemical weapon forged by Sterling's billions was too potent. Alex was trapped. For the first time since he was a child, he was entirely, undeniably human. Chloe bolted upright, her newly awakened Omega instincts screaming in terror. She saw Alex on the floor, gasping for air, the supernatural aura of his power completely smothered. "Alex!" She scrambled off the bed, dropping to his side. "What is it? What's happening?" "Poison," Alex choked out, his hands trembling as he forced himself to stand through sheer, indomitable willpower. His werewolf strength was gone, but his mind remained the razor-sharp tactical weapon of a Mafia king. Sterling, he poisoned the air. "I can't shift." Outside, the storm broke. Not rain, but the muffled, rhythmic thwip-thwip-thwip of suppressed automatic weapons. The Volkov death squads had breached the perimeter. Without their supernatural speed and strength, the remaining Russo guards patrolling the grounds were being slaughtered by heavily armed, fully shifted Russian mercenaries. Alex moved to the wall behind the mahogany headboard and pressed his bloody thumb against a hidden biometric scanner. The panel slid away, revealing a devastating arsenal of human warfare. "Put this on," Alex ordered, tossing a heavy Kevlar vest to Chloe. He didn't have time to be gentle. He strapped a tactical rig over his chest, racking the slide of a sleek, matte black assault rifle loaded with pure silver hollow points. He shoved a serrated combat knife into his boot and handed Chloe a compact 9mm pistol. "I don't know how to shoot," she whispered, her hands shaking so violently she could barely hold the weapon. "You pointed at the door. If anything comes through that isn't me, you pull the trigger until it stops clicking," Alex commanded, his human eyes locking onto hers with a ferocity that didn't require glowing amber to be terrifying. "I am going to hold the hallway. Do not leave this room." "You're human right now," Chloe cried, grabbing his arm. "They are going to tear you apart." Alex pulled her into a bruising, desperate kiss. "I am Russo," he growled against her lips. "Wolf or man, I am still the king of this city. And they are in my house." He stepped out of the master suite, pulling the heavy oak doors shut behind him, plunging Chloe into terrified silence. The grand vaulted hallway of the East Wing was a killing floor. Alex moved with the lethal, calculating precision of a seasoned cartel assassin. The Volkov mercenaries expected to fight weakened, paralyzed wolves. They didn't expect a Mafia boss who was perfectly comfortable utilizing military-grade ballistics. Two massive, shifted gray wolves bounded up the marble staircase, their jaws slavering, eyes fixed on the scent of the Omega radiating from the master suite. Alex didn't hesitate. He raised the rifle and fired two controlled, deafening bursts. The silver hollow points shredded the wolves' chests, the toxic metal instantly igniting their blood. They collapsed, violently shifting back into their human forms as they died on the Persian runners. But there were too many. A third mercenary, still in human form and wearing heavy tactical gear, dropped from the skylight above, crashing onto Alex. The impact knocked the rifle from Alex's hands, sending it clattering down the hallway. The two men engaged in brutal, close-quarters combat. The Russian was massive, his movements enhanced by the encroaching shift, but Alex fought with the ruthless, dirty efficiency of the streets. He drove his elbow into the mercenary's throat, slipped the combat knife from his boot, and drove it upward into the man's ribcage. Alex shoved the dead weight off him, his chest heaving, his human muscles screaming in protest. Clap, clap, clap. The slow, mocking applause echoed from the top of the stairs. Victor stepped out of the shadows. The Volkov lieutenant wasn't in a rush. He wore his heavy wool trench coat, his ice-pale eyes fixed on the bloodied human Mafia boss standing between him and his prize. "Magnificent," Victor sneered, stepping over the bodies of his fallen men. "Richard Sterling said the dampener would make you helpless, but you humans are remarkably resilient when cornered. It's almost a pity I have to skin you." "Your boss sent a lapdog to do a king's job," Alex spat, wiping a stream of blood from his split lip. He tightened his grip on his combat knife, his body coiled like a spring. Victor's smile vanished. His eyes flashed a blinding glacial blue. The sound of cracking bone echoed through the corridor as Victor's body violently expanded, tearing through his clothes. In seconds, a monstrous, towering dire wolf with fur the color of dirty snow stood in Victor's place. The beast stood almost 7 feet tall on its hind legs, radiating an aura of pure, unadulterated slaughter. Alex was outmatched. A human with a knife against a fully shifted Alpha-tier enforcer was a death sentence, but he didn't take a single step backward. He braced himself, ready to die, defending the door behind him. The monstrous wolf lunged, closing the distance in a blur of gray fur and razor-sharp claws. Alex ducked, slashing upward with the knife, but the blade barely scored the thick, muscular hide of the beast. Victor's massive paw slammed into Alex's chest, shattering 3 of his ribs and sending him flying backward. He crashed hard into the oak doors of the master suite, the wood splintering under the impact. Alex coughed, a spray of blood painting the marble floor. His vision blurred. He tried to push himself up, but his right arm was dislocated, hanging uselessly at his side. Victor stalked forward, a low, rumbling growl shaking the hallway. He wasn't going to kill Alex quickly. He wanted the Alpha to watch as he took the Omega. Suddenly, the splintered doors of the master suite were kicked open from the inside. Chloe stood in the doorway. She wasn't trembling anymore. She wasn't the terrified, submissive nurse who had cowered under Dr. Sterling's abuse. The matriarch ring on her finger caught the dim hallway light, flashing a brilliant, defiant green. She remembered the Pioneer Square forensics. She remembered the evidence bag Silvio had brought into the medical suite, the custom-milled silver nitrate bullet that had killed Luca. Victor paused, his massive wolf head tilting in confusion at the sight of the unarmed Omega stepping between him and his prey. He let out a huff of amusement, preparing to swat her aside. But Chloe was a trauma nurse. She knew exactly where the major arteries were. As Victor lunged, Chloe didn't flinch. She dropped to her knees, sliding across the slick marble floor beneath the beast's sweeping claws. In her hand, she gripped the jagged silver nitrate bullet like a makeshift dagger. With a scream of pure, primal fury, she drove the poisoned titanium core deep into the femoral artery of Victor's hind leg. The reaction was instantaneous and catastrophic. Victor let out a deafening, high-pitched shriek as the concentrated silver nitrate pumped directly into his bloodstream. The poison paralyzed his nervous system, forcing a violent, agonizing shift back into his human form. He collapsed onto the marble, convulsing, his veins turning a sickly, necrotic black. Alex didn't waste the opening. Ignoring the blinding pain in his chest, he forced himself off the floor, lunged forward, and buried his combat knife to the hilt in the side of Victor's neck. The Volkov lieutenant choked, his icy eyes widening in shock before glazing over into the permanent stare of the dead. Silence descended on the hallway, broken only by the ragged sound of Alex's breathing. Chloe scrambled to his side, her hands frantically assessing his wounds. "Alex, hold still. Your ribs are shattered." "I'm alive," Alex rasped, his left hand coming up to cup her face, smearing his blood across her cheek. He looked at her, his chest swelling with an emotion so powerful it rivaled the mate bond itself. Absolute, unwavering pride. "You killed him. My beautiful, brilliant Luna." By dawn, the effects of the neurological dampener had dissipated. The Russo enforcers, deeply ashamed of their incapacitation but burning with vengeance, systematically cleared the estate. Every Volkov mercenary was dead. Their bodies were loaded into the same Sterling medical truck that had brought the poison, destined for a fiery grave. Silvio found Alex and Chloe in the shattered master suite. The Alpha was seated on the edge of the bed, his arms set and his ribs bound tightly by Chloe. His amber eyes were glowing once more, the ancient beast fully restored and furious. "Alpha," Silvio bowed deeply. "The estate is secure, the Volkovs are wiped out. What are your orders regarding Richard Sterling?" Alex looked out the shattered window, watching the sun rise over the mansions of Medina, casting a golden light over the estates of tech billionaires like Bill Gates and the hidden supernatural elite alike. "Sterling thinks he is untouchable because he controls the hospitals," Alex said, his voice a low, terrifying rumble that promised absolute destruction. "Take 20 men to the Bellevue Pack compound. Burn his medical supply warehouses to the ground. Strip his pack of their territory. And bring Richard Sterling to the docks. He will share his son's fate." "It will be done, Alpha," Silvio replied, a savage smile crossing his face before he retreated. Alex turned his gaze back to Chloe. She was sitting beside him, the horrific brand of the Volkovs on her shoulder now just a scar of a past she had officially conquered. She was no longer a runaway. She was the queen of the Seattle underworld. He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair, inhaling the deep, unmasked scent of rain-washed jasmine and sweet cream. "No more running," Alex whispered, pressing a kiss to the pulse point on her neck. "No more hiding." Chloe leaned into him, resting her head over his steady, powerful heart, her fingers gently tracing the silver filigree of the matriarch ring. "No," she agreed softly, a fierce, protective light shining in her green eyes. "Let them try to come for us. We'll be ready." Did this story of Mafia kings, hidden omegas, and brutal betrayals keep you on the edge of your seat? The clash between the ruthless Alex Russo and the terrifying Volkov syndicate proves that sometimes the only way to defeat a monster is to unleash a bigger one. If you loved the intense drama, the heart-stopping plot twists, and Chloe's incredible transformation from a shy, terrified ER nurse to a fierce, unstoppable Mafia queen, then you need to be part of our pack. Hit that like button right now to show your support for Alex and Chloe's epic romance. Don't forget to share this story with your friends who love dark fantasy, werewolf lore, and high-stakes Mafia drama. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on our next thrilling, immersive storytelling adventure. The underworld is always waiting.